Tables have finally arrived in Google Sheets after Excel's had them since Excel 2007. And while there are some similarities, there are some good differences as well that Google Sheets have implemented. But before we get to those, let's just see how to set up these tables. If you open up Google Sheets shortly after the tables rollout, you might be met with this sidebar on the right. If we mouse over some of these features, it gives us a little preview of what might be possible using tables. There's a lot of templates to get you started if you're starting a new project, and these are definitely worth exploring. But for now, let's close this because we've got our own data to use. So with our data open, we click somewhere within the data, we go up to Format, Convert to Table. It gives us some tooltips. First off, down the bottom, the table headers have already been frozen. You can see that using this gray bar here. We can unfreeze it if we want, but it's a good idea to keep it frozen so when we scroll, we always see the headers. It gives us hints on what we can do, changing the column type, create custom views, and personalize the tables. Let's take a look at a few of those things. So first, none of these column formats have been set. These here are obviously a date. So if we click this drop down, we can choose the column type. We'll go date, date. So now all of these are dates. And if we try to put something that's not a date, then it says it doesn't match the column type. So this needs to be a date. So now if we try to enter something else down here, the table size automatically updates. And again, this has to be a date. If we try to enter something here, we get that error. Of course, we don't have to just type it in. We can double click and then choose from a pop-up calendar. That doesn't work here because it's outside of the table borders. So when we double click, it just enters the cell as usual. If we want to have a little bit of a hint to the user of what this should be, then we can go to the edit column type and then show placeholders. So now when we go down to the bottom, it shows us what this should be. Day, month, year in this format. We've got another date over here, so we can click this and choose date. The client name should always be the same format, but we have a few options here. We could change it to a drop-down. So a returning client can come in and we can select any of these. If it's a new client, then we need to go down to the bottom, click this edit button to open up the sidebar and then add another item. The other option for a client name is to change it to a people chip. However, when we do that, we'll need to go through and create data for everyone. I'm not going to go through and create people chips, so I'm just going to change that back to a drop-down. And I don't like the drop-down chips, so I'm going to go over to advanced options and change it to an arrow. Now I think something that's missing here is under the text. It would be nice if we could have like a regex option in here. So it would have to follow the same format. Initial, dot, space, last name. That'd be really nice to have here. Hopefully they'll implement that in the future. The service code over here, let's change that to a drop-down. And in this case, I want this to be the drop-down chips. We'll just change up the colors. That gives us a visualization of which service is being used the most. Provider ID, exactly the same. We'd need to do more analyses on these to figure out which ones are being used the most and the least. The amount invoiced, that's going to be a dollar amount, and same with the amount paid. Again, back in the reference, I'd really like this to be a regex, but we don't have that. So I guess the best option here would be a text. Other ones that we have here that we haven't used, we've got checkbox, different types of date times, and percent. Now under smart chips, you've got all the usual things. Now we have a column type for each of our columns. If we select all of it, I wonder if we could click drop down and then show placeholders to show all of them. But that just shows the one that we are currently on. And for some reason, when we click on this and click on show placeholders, it jumps back up to the top, which is a real pain. Of course, as this is a table, we can go through and sort. So let's change this one to the service code so that they're all together. And again, we can see how many of each are being used. Let's undo that. And one thing I really like is the group by column, and it groups everything by the particular day. Now, if we've got an error in here, 2017, this should be 2024. We change it. It doesn't automatically change, but it does say that we can refresh. I'll just change this one again. Hit refresh. And now it's all grouped by the particular day. Clicking up here doesn't give us the same options as before. It gives us the filter options because this is now a filter view. And unfortunately, there's no way to change this to a filter by month like you would with a pivot table. But what we can do is right click and insert a column to the left. I'm just going to get rid of the filter view by clicking this X here to exit. And I'll write equals month of the service date. Press enter. Suggested autofill, press enter on that. But another option to use is table references. Equals month like we usually would, but then we start typing out table 1 because this is named table 1. Open a square bracket And then here's all of our options. These are our headers at the top. We'll choose service date. Press enter. Again, it only gives us the first one. There is no flash fill. But if we use our array formula, that will fill out the entire column. Let's name this one the service month, set it as a number, and now group by this column. If we want the name of the month, first we have to find the formula that we created. I'm going to hold Control tilde and scroll down until we find that formula, which is right there. And we'll change the formula a bit. So we'll write text, and then we'll get rid of the month function with a comma, MMMM in double quotations. And that gives us the months in month order, January, then February, and so on. We get these red marks because we're no longer a number, but because we're in a filter view, we can't just go up to the top and change the column type to text. Down the bottom, it also says we're out of sync. If we refresh this, then it's going to reorder everything with April 1st and then February and so on, because it's now going in alphabetical order for the service month. So a few little drawbacks here and there. Let's say we want to save this view so we can send it to someone else or just quickly access it later on. Let's click on Save View, Group by Service Month, Save. And now if we close this, we'll just change this to a text. And now to get back to that view, hit the calculator, and we have Group by Service Month. Now, like any spreadsheet technique, tables might not be the best for every situation. First, it might be confusing to people that are unfamiliar with them because this is a new product, a new feature. The new look might be a little bit more complex for some people. Structured table reference formulas can be a little bit confusing. So for example, if we go outside our table and we wanted to use a particular column, you might think, oh, I'll just go with the provider ID and press enter, but it doesn't give us anything. Luckily, Google Sheets tells us what we need to do, but not everyone's familiar with the array formula function. If you're one of them, then just double click into the formula, hold Control, Shift, and Enter to give us that array formula. Press enter, and there it is, but it doesn't give us the header. There is one way to get all the headers. If we type out the word table, we can see what the sheet reference is. This is A2 to L. Now A2 starts here, but if we go to all, then we get A1, which includes the headers. Again, we need to use the array formula, and that gives us everything. Now remember, this should be a data table. So one thing that might not work so well is if you've got a blank row. Let's delete this. We do get those placeholders here, but if you've got blank rows or subtotals, then the tables might not interpret it properly. And it's sometimes not possible to convert large, complex data sets into tables, depending on the structure. Now, if your structure is set, then large data tables shouldn't be a problem. For example, let's take this spreadsheet here, which has a list of over 38,000 cars. If we click somewhere in it and go Format, Convert to Table, that converted it to a table in less than a second. If we don't want this as a table, we can go Revert to Unformatted Data, taking us back to what it was before. Of course, there's a few other features like customizing the table colors, alternating colors on and off. And that pretty much covers everything about the data tables to get you started for your own projects. And if you've got any questions, you know where to leave them. And if you wanted to check out those cars with the dependent drop-downs, make sure you check out